All across the country, you're seeing people out into the streets on college campuses and at town halls all across the country. And here to give us the latest news and the update from the resistance, our editor zero of the Raging Chicken Press, Kevin Mahoney. Kevin, thanks for tuning in.
Hey, Rick, it's so great to be here today to talk about all the action that's going around from coast to coast.
So I understand on college campuses across the country, we're seeing people out in the streets. What's going on?
That's right. Wednesday, March 1st was the day of action. More than 50 colleges across the campus. They're basically taking a stand against Trump's corporatization of higher education and his corporate cabinet, which promises to further the trend towards privatization. So what you have faculty, students, and staff members from across universities and colleges across the country that are basically standing and say, look, we want fair wages, we want an end to student debt, and we want to kind of take back our universities and claim them for the people as they were intended. So it's a major, major day of action that Wednesday, March 1st.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that, and the reality is on Tuesday, the president gave no indication whatsoever that he cared about any of those issues.
No, that's right. Education was not even brought up. The best that we've got going on right now is that we've got a Secretary of Education who promises to only deepen education. The one mention that we did get from Trump on Tuesday was that he was going to open up the federal funds for religious and private education for more quote unquote school choice. We know that it's just a code for further corporatization of our campuses. And that's why you've got people standing up from across the country. Right. And this day of action on March 1st, that basically followed, kind of months and months and months of active action and activism across campuses, both at the labor front and at the student activism front, taking a stand against debt and corporatization.
Now, there's a bunch of things going on in your state here in Pennsylvania, right?
You got it. Here's a perfect indication of this. This past fall, Pennsylvania has a state system of higher education, which is comprised of 14 colleges and universities, state-owned college and universities across the state. And this past fall, after a very contentious contract negotiation, the faculty went on strike for 3 days. It was the first strike in the history of that faculty union. The faculty union's name is ABSCUF. Well, one of the keys to that victory, that successful strike, was the fact that students mobilized and organized out in support of their faculty members and stood side by side, shoulder to shoulder on the picket lines with faculty members to reclaim our campuses. When that strike was successful, those students then started looking around at their own situation and say, hey, what about our student debt? What about the increase in tuition? What about the elimination of programs due to austerity measures? And they decided to keep on organizing. And what they did is they launched something called the PA Student Power Network, which is comprised of student organizations on each one of the 14 state university systems, but also some other private or state-related universities across the country. So you've got campaigns at, for example, Westchester University, a couple of weeks back, they just launched, the students there launched a basic Fight for 15 campaign, $15 minimum wage on campus and a tuition freeze. All right. A week before that, students at Millersville University, also part of the same network, launched a $15 an hour minimum wage and a tuition freeze, right? So what you begin to see this kind of coordination across the state, but it's not limited to just those issues. For example, at Kutztown University, one of the state system schools, students, white nationalists were posting flyers up around campus, and those students stood up and said, not on our campus, and they organized an amazing march on campus as a resistance to that.
Good for them. I also understand all across the country, you've got, the resistance movement hitting town halls and taking it to their representatives.
You bet. By now, I think that Indivisible is becoming almost a household name, especially on the progressive circles. And it's basically taken the Tea Party script and flipping it back around then and showing Republican lawmakers what it's like to be on the receiving end of people power. The difference is that this people power that's being organized is truly a grassroots movement. It is not corporate funded. It is not having the billionaire backers that are bussing people into town hall meetings. These are coming from constituents who are showing up, not at mass protests in their hometowns, but also in their constituents' offices, constituents' town hall meetings across the country. So let me give you an example. This past weekend, there was a mobilization at state by state to show up and support or kind of resist the repeal of the ACA or Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. And we saw town halls kind of packed. We saw representatives' offices packed by constituents, and you saw rallies taking place across the country. So, for for example, 200 people staged a rally in the small city of Birmingham, Michigan, right, last Saturday. Another 2 people in the small town of Petersboro, New Hampshire. You saw hundreds take to the streets in Atlanta, Georgia, and similar protests took place across the country. And now you've got Republican lawmakers coming out and reporting to The Hill and CNN and so on that these protests may prevent the repeal of Obamacare in the way, the full appeal of Obamacare in the way that's happened. So the message here is that pressure works, protest works,
Absolutely.
and mass mobilization in your backyard is what is going to get things done.
Absolutely. As I've said for years and years, feet in the streets and arms folded. That's how we change things and we get things moving in the right direction. But here's the thing. The Republicans aren't going to take this lying down. They're trying to fight back against this.
That's right, and they're fighting back in the worst way possible if you care about democracy and freedom, right, and care about our constitutional rights, especially our right to assemble. What you find out, what's happening right now, is that Republican lawmakers in at least 18 states across this country, right, have advanced laws to try to criminalize protest or to significantly curtail them. So they've criminalized different kinds of tactics in some states. For example, like if you block highways, right, we're going to treat that maybe a felony in some instances. If you wear a mask for a protest, that we're going to criminalize that. And in one case, in Arizona, which people mobilized and actually beat back down this law, in Arizona, they were going to attempt to say, if you violate these new protest restrictions, right, we can seize your assets. Basically following the model of what happens with drug seizures. When people are arrested for drugs, they can seize their property.
Wow.
Activists successfully beat that back, thank God, because that is not the kind of scenario that we want to move, right? The people might think it's kind of, extreme to start talking about fascist measures and things like this, but when you see something like that, I don't know what else you call it, Rick.
I don't either. Kevin, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
You got it, Rick.
Kevin Mahoney, Editor Zero at Raging Chicken Press. Thanks so much. Quick break, right back.